Alright guys, well, welcome back. I am fooling around with this old truck. Posted an intro video about this earlier, but the truck is a 41 GMC straight 6, and it hasn't run in about 15 years, as best I can figure. Maybe more like 20. So I've done a few things here. I've got I hope, halfway decent battery. I want to try and crank this thing over. I've pulled the air cleaner. I've got a little bit of two-stroke fuel here that we can dribble into it here and see if we can get it to fire. And I've pulled the valve cover. The reason for that is I'm sure everything in here is dry, because this thing has been sitting for so long. However, you can see that everything is rust-free. Still actually got what appears to be assembly lube on the push rods and rocker arms. So I think we're going to be okay there, but I still want to roll this thing over. I want to crank it for a while and get lubrication all the way through it before we even try to make it fire. It's a fresh motor rebuild. I don't want to wreck anything. I want to make sure that this thing's got good lubrication before we go any further. So as I am surmising, and I'm guessing here, usually the top end is one of the last things to receive oil. And it looks to me like that tube will be our oil return. That any excess oil flow bleeds off through the end of that tube and back into the crankcase. So theoretically, we should be able to crank it until we get oil all the way down through there and dribbling out of that pipe. And that should tell us that we've got good oiling all the way through. I could go the additional step of removing the spark plugs. I want to see how it's going to crank first before we do that. If it turns out that this battery is weak, I may go ahead and do that just so we don't sap that battery while we're trying to get some oil flow through this thing. I've unhooked the wiring from the cab there and there and at the alternator. Unhooked everything here at the old. I don't want to put any power through the wiring in the cab. Like I said, as I recall, and I'm going from memory here, there was possibly an issue with some of the wiring in the cab. I thought they said that they got it running and it ran for a couple of minutes and they started to see smoke from somewhere in the cab and shut it down. So I just want to eliminate all that. I've just unhooked everything. What we'll end up doing is we'll supply hot right to the coil from the lug there on the starter, and we'll see what we can get. I've got the fuel line unhooked into and out of the pump. I don't want to run any of the 15 or 20-year-old gasoline through this thing. So I've got that all unhooked. If we can get it to snort here on a little bit of fuel from my can, then we can connect it up to a 5-gallon bucket and see if we can get it to run and idle. See if the pump even works. So I've got all that stuff disconnected. I'm going to try and do this in one take if I can, if this battery is strong enough to let me do it. So I've got the battery just kind of sitting loosely in place here. Actually, it's still got the old battery in here. Actually, it's a brand new battery. It was never used. It never ran on that battery, and the battery is shot because it's so old. So I've got a shop battery in here that's fair, but I think it'll give us enough to see if we're going to be able to do anything. So I'll go ahead and see what happens here. No sparks. That's good. I should add that I've got a fire extinguisher nearby. Hopefully we don't need that, but it's at the ready in case we do. I don't know if I want to tighten those down all the way or not. Maybe better, just so we can see if we can get a little bit of crankage going here. Just snug these up a little bit. Truck is in neutral. Let's see what happens here. So I think starting this thing is kind of a two-step process. You've got a key on the dash, and then there is a pedal on the floor here to engage the starter. I want to be out here to see what's going on, so I'm not going to use that. I'm actually just going to depress the button on the starter here, and we'll see if we get anything happening. So let's see what happens. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Test light. Let's see if we've got any power here. If I can find a decent ground. Got nothing here. So we either need to snug up those bolts on the battery or clean the clamps. Maybe both. Oop, that's progress. That's kind of hard to push. Let's see. Pry bar. See if we can get the Bendix to engage. And the Bendix isn't going to throw out. We're going to have to pull the starter and give it a little love tap here, I guess. We'll see what happens. See if that's enough to do it. Could we be so lucky? Probably not. Alright, so what do you think are the chances? Does that lever throw the Bendix out as well? I don't think it does. Let's try it just to be sure. I don't think that's the case, but... Nothing. Can we turn it over by hand? Not real conveniently. Well, let me, so much for doing this in one take, I guess. Let's try once more. Yeah, nothing. All right, let me stop this and see if we can get that to engage, and we'll try again. All right, guys, well, a couple of things we've learned here this evening. Number one, it does appear to be the case that that lever on the floor also throws the Bendix out. However, I cannot get this motor to turn over. It seems to be stuck, which is not entirely surprising given the amount of time that it's sat. So I've removed all 6 spark plugs, and I juiced it up with America's favorite libation, and we'll let that soak, and we'll see what happens here in a day or two. I've verified that it's stuck. I can't move it from the crank pulley here. I also removed the inspection cover from the transmission, and even putting a hi Callie, shop cat, even putting a screwdriver into the teeth on the flywheel and reefing on it. They're pretty good. I'm not able to get the engine to turn over, so I think we want to let this thing soak a little while, see if we can free up those stuck rings before we damage something. So we'll let it soak. We'll give it a day or two. I'll throw a rag or some towels or something over it to keep the large chunks out of it. This is air conditioning here. You turn that on for AC, and that way for heat. We'll throw some rags over it just so it doesn't get all full of leaves and junk and cat hair in the next couple of days, and we'll give it a shot again. So that's it for now. Thanks for watching.